Yo, what's up, good people? We're back again.
Said how's
Boys
it? How's
from
it?
the Phantom Geek Zone, here to
That
give
is
you another
us.
dope review.
Mm-hmm.
This time around, so this is part of our MCU
Timeline,
series, right?
yeah.
Yeah, a recap
Timeline. What do we
series.
call it? Timeline series?
We'll figure out a
Yeah,
nice
we
name for
good.
the
Yeah,
series. Yeah, by the
but
time I upload, it's definitely gonna have like the official name and
okay,
so on.
got you.
So
Yeah,
yeah, don't mind this
yeah.
bit too much.
Mm.
So essentially, we're now on the third movie in the series, which
Mm.
is Iron Man.
Okay, wait. So before we start,
Yeah,
we'll
yeah.
just give a short explanation.
Cool.
So intros. I'm Riyaal. This is Izzy. If you know us, you know us. If you're new, welcome.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So we're doing a timeline type series. So basically, on the MCU chronological order. So
Yeah.
how events happened.
Mhm.
So number one would be Captain America.
Mhm.
Number two would
Be
be
Captain Marvel.
Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
And then now we
We
are
got
doing number
Iron
three
Man.
today, which is Iron Man,
Yeah.
the first movie that was released in the MCU.
Yes. So this is like the beginning
This is the OG
of
movie.
Marvel
Yeah.
Studios as it is, and yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah. Release date 2008. So we were kids.
yeah,
So we've got that nostalgia factor coming in.
yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah. And then obviously it was my first experience with Robert Downey Jr.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, this was like his comeback.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
of course.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
I don't really know him too well.
No, no,
Yeah,
no.
that's the series in a nutshell. So we're gonna go from movie one all the way to movie
Yeah,
20 something
movie
now.
300 and whatever.
Yeah, 20 something. Yeah,
Yeah,
and yeah. So obviously our usual is highlights, lowlights, what we liked, what we didn't like,
yeah.
and other thought pieces.
And then yeah, whatever else
Yeah.
we have to say about it, we'll just
Yep.
chip in throughout. Now I want to throw a curveball, right? So
Mm.
that is our normal formula, but I think
Yeah.
with this man, there's just so much history, there's so much nostalgia,
Yeah.
there's so much everything that I'm happy to just spitball our way throughout the
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
conversation, as long as you of course make sure to hit all the main points. So as you mentioned, this is literally the very first MCU movie, and I always get my memory a bit muddled up when I think about how this even came along in the history, because there's this temptation to always think that, oh yeah, when they started this, they were just making a solo movie, and then somewhere down the line they're like, oh, let's make a whole universe. But I'm like, no,
No,
we
they mentioned
had
it.
Nick Fury pop up,
Yeah,
at the end of the movie.
my first experience to an end credit scene.
Yes,
And
these guys made it
do
a
you know
thing.
how far?
Like,
Because I had the DVD and I grew up on video, so you obviously you go all the way to the end and then you go back. So I was like, DVD, let's fast forward all the way to the end.
I
Wait,
mean,
what is this scene popping up with Samuel Jackson? I'm like,
listen,
what?
man. Speaking of DVDs and nostalgia and all of that,
Yeah.
I must say, shout out to my homie Johnny. He's actually he got the DVD, and then he came through. He's like, man, you must watch this. I'm like, oh, Iron Man. And it's always interesting when people speak about this. By people, I mean like the studio itself when they speak on Iron Man, because again, quick history. Where Marvel movies are concerned, we're in the 90s.
Yeah.
Marvel is facing bankruptcy. This is Marvel Comics, right?
Yeah.
Because again, in case you don't know, Marvel started as a comic book printing company. 90s, they're facing bankruptcy, and they like, look, the only way for us to survive
Sell
is
off the
if we
rights.
sell the rights, the movie rights to some of our characters.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, one of the guys that made a bid, I mean, they did end up with a solid offer, but it was different at first. Sony.
I know they did Spider-Man. Obviously,
Sony
Spider-Man.
ended up getting Spider-Man, right? And it's like it's a universe-based thing when you buy the rights, because in our heads, like, oh, they've got Spider-Man, so they can remake Spider-Man, but no. Spider-Man and all-rated characters, which is why like
Spider-Verse.
Spider-Verse
is such a big
the
thing.
animated one. It's a purely Sony project. If you think of like Venom,
Yes,
like
yeah.
a solo, Sony thing. We'll see what happens down the line. And basically, Sony was given the chance. I don't know
To buy
how
all,
many, yeah,
or most of them, eh?
or a lot of the
Yeah.
main, Marvel characters, including Spider-Man.
Yeah. And
Now,
what was the thing?
you
They
have to-
only thought Spider-Man was profitable, and that's why they bought Spider-Man.
Spider-Man is the only worthwhile,
Yeah.
character to buy.
And that's still fair. It's still very worthwhile. Like,
But now here's the kicker, right? The exact amounts I've forgotten, but proportion wise, I think it does speak to the same point. So something along the lines of, look, man, you guys can pay us 10 million and get this many characters, which is more than just one. They were like, screw that, we just want Spider-Man. And they ended up paying a lot more just to get one character. And this is where, the whole 2020 hindsight thing comes into
Yeah,
play.
yeah.
Because look, looking back, it's easy to be like, you guys could have been, what
Yeah,
Disney
but I
is
mean,
now.
but this is 30 years ago.
But back then, you know what? As our channel grows, I can't wait to get to the point when we can start inserting like these official pictures and whatnot,
Yeah,
just to give some visual context what we're talking about. But the quality of movies at this point was just atrocious. I
superhero
mean,
movies. Yeah,
for
90s.
for the Incredible Hulk, in as much as he has his own review video, but I'll just throw this in
Yeah,
here. There was a time when there's this bodybuilder called Lou
Lou
Ferrigno.
Ferrigno. Yep.
So
Yeah.
whenever Bruce Banner transforms to the Hulk, they would get this bodybuilder guy,
Paint him
paint
green.
him green,
Yeah.
not this green screen. No, no,
Yeah.
no.
No. No
They would take
CGI.
actual paint,
It's an actual human
Dulux
being.
or
Yeah.
whatever, and they would paint the guy, and
Yeah.
he would run around, as
Yeah.
Hulk.
But I guess sign of the times as well. You don't have the technology to keep up.
Be that as it may, literally, there's no image that you can conjure up in your mind where this is like an amazing looking production, So I understand to some extent where Sony was coming from. It's like, man, comic book movies, Superman was one of the few,
Yeah.
the original Superman with Christopher Reeve, one of the few where it showed the great potential of comic book movies,
And I
but it
guess
had not
also
become
the
a solid thing.
the Batman.
Batman was
Yeah.
already out. Yeah, they came out in the 80s,
80s, yeah,
So
they're
they had
both
very
there.
few,
That-
frames
yeah.
of reference.
And they've tried other stuff. I think like Wonder Woman had a tryout.
Yeah, and all of them were just horrible. These other Spider-Man iterations, if you were to see those, man, like
Oh, the old school
yes,
Spider-Man.
yes, horrible, horrible. But anyway, so then Sony ends up buying Spider-Man. Fox buys the X-Men
And I think Fantastic Four.
and Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
And yeah, different studios bought different pieces of Marvel characters. Fast forward then around 2005, Marvel is like, man, you know what? Look at all the money these guys are making with our characters. And aside from maybe, I don't know, a royalty check or something, they are hardly making any real money off of this. So they were like, let's start making our own movies. So they went, fast forward through the story, they built their own, movie studio, and they were like, what character are we going to start off with? And here's the whole point of this, tangent. When Iron Man was selected, they chose him because they were like, let's just go for a B-list character that we can, try this thing out with and see. And again, when I think of that moment when I held that DVD in my hand and just how awesome it looked, not to mention how great the movie itself looked, when you think back to how this guy was chosen because he's a lower tier, I'm like, in what universe?
And it's just like full circle. That's why they chose Robert Downey Jr. as well, because he was just coming off his stint in rehab, and like he's a lower tier actor. You don't have to give him a lot of money.
Back into the business.
Wasn't even the most. What is it?
Terrence
Howard was the highest paid guy.
Yes, Robert Downey Jr. was not. Robert Downey Jr.
The main character,
the lead actor on this production, was not the highest paid. He was given 500,000. Terrence Howard was paid 4 million.
4 million.
Yeah, he played James Rhodes in the movie. But yeah, so man, hell of a rich history as far as how it came to be and also what it's developed since then. So just bear with us throughout these, fan moments. But I think if anyone is going to understand, it's the audience, of this production.
It's the nostalgia. Like,
yeah, man, there's a lot going on behind this. Now, before we get into the nitty-gritties, I've got potentially controversial comments to make.
Okay, I mean, let's start off with it and we can go into it, I mean, what is
for the longest time, hey, and I mean, look, Marvel has had its ups and downs as far as how hard it's hit the mark in terms of delivering quality products, right? And again, if you're in 30 odd movies,
you're gonna have good ones,
and that there'll be some good and bad ones. And at any given point, in fact, I think I've said it possibly in one of the earlier reviews that we've done, that I'll always have Iron Man in my top 5 no matter what, that sort of thing. And this, given the level of nostalgia behind it, creates an interesting conversation behind the level of distortion that nostalgia can sometimes bring about. Now, don't get it twisted. I still enjoyed this movie.
It's tangent. It's why people are still arguing between Tom Holland and Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man.
Yeah, it's the nostalgia factor.
Exactly.
I was avoiding
Tobey Maguire people, you're wrong.
Look,
But yeah,
I was
well,
avoiding bringing that up because of how much I
yeah,
have to say about it and
yeah.
how
But
much
that's a
controversy
story
that
for
also
another.
stirs.
Yeah,
But it's
but
a very good
yeah,
point. It speaks to exactly what I'm saying, right? And so I watched the movie, and while I still enjoyed it, I was like, okay, I don't know if it's still in the top five. Not that it's a bad thing, because it only means that Marvel has created at
yeah, the
least five
quality.
greater movies
Yeah,
over time. Now, as far as which movie slot into that, we'll speak on it as we go along, because I think what we can do is also create like an evolving list.
yeah, yeah.
As far
We could
as
go maybe like if we do. So we'll do one and two. So let's say Captain America, Captain Marvel. Then we rank those two,
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
then three and four. Then we'll slot in three and four.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
with each, yeah, at some point,
and then
maybe around
eventually,
with the, yeah, we'll do it around the fifth one.
yeah, eventually
Where,
we'll have like an ongoing tier list,
yeah,
a
it's an
ranking
ongoing
for
tier list and an evolving top five where we shuffle movies around
yeah.
as we go along. So yeah, it was great, but it was such an interesting, excuse me, it was an interesting observation to make as I was watching that movie. Now, okay, do we even need to? I suppose, for the sake of checking all the boxes, Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man, just on the
Oh,
casting
it's
perspective, how
ridiculous.
great was
Like
it with this
yo,
movie?
for me, like I mean, I rewatched it recently
Yeah,
after years, and
yeah,
it's still such a good casting. He
yeah,
looks the part. Like
yes,
if you're going a comic or cartoon, he
yeah.
looks very similar to Tony Stark.
Thank you.
Um,
Yes,
and then him as a human being, he's just naturally charismatic, which leads into Iron Man and the
yeah,
way he portrayed him. Is just naturally charismatic,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and I just feel it's a brilliant casting.
No, but without a doubt. Look, and I mean,
Yeah.
one of the greatest directors of our time, Christopher Nolan himself, because interestingly enough, on two fronts, interestingly enough, Robert Downey Jr. is, playing in Christopher Nolan's movie Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
And Christopher Nolan himself said that the casting of Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man is one of the greatest
Yeah.
casting decisions in cinema history. And bear in mind, if you think about Christopher Nolan and the insane level of casting
Gravitas,
he hits with his
yeah.
movies, like
I mean,
it's out of this world.
just obviously everybody knows Heath Ledger as the Joker.
Yes,
Tom Hardy as Bane.
yes.
Um,
And these are
and
castings that had everyone raising their eyebrows at the
yeah.
beginning.
Even Robert Pattinson in Tenet. Like
Yes.
you wouldn't think that Twilight guy, but then look
He
at him
killed
now.
it. He was my favorite,
Yeah.
he was my favorite actor in that
And
movie.
he's the guy who gave us Oppenheimer.
Dude. So yeah, no, Christopher Nolan is insane.
Yeah.
Now, when I said it's interesting on two fronts, in the movie, as you recall, Howard Stark, Tony's dad, worked on the atomic bomb.
Yeah,
They
the
said he was on
Oppenheimer, the Manhattan Project, yep.
So yeah, full circle in retrospect sort of thing. And yeah, so look, the casting across the board, I'm actually
Yeah,
a huge fan of. Robert Downey by far being
Yeah.
the greatest.
I would like to talk to you about Rhodey, but let's
Um,
do it at a latest Iron
No, no.
Man because obviously we know.
Do you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because
Okay. Cool. Cool.
yeah.
Okay. Fine. So, right.
But I think for this moment, I think it was a good casting.
they ended up recasting
Terrence Howard,
Terrence Howard, right, with
Don
Don
Cheadle.
Cheadle
Damn.
into that damn into the role of James Rhodes. But it's cool.
Yeah.
We'll do the breakdown
Yeah.
later on. Okay, let's speak about him in this movie because that's
Yeah.
it filters into why he was recast eventually.
Yeah. So Terrence Howard, I liked him. Like just his small bits, like when he's on the phone with Tony. It's like.
Yeah.
Tony, is there something I should be worried about? Like, no. Why are you out of breath?
Yeah. And also that I don't know if I should
Yeah,
say like
but
parental
he-
figure role, but
Yeah,
he kept having
like-
to kick Tony behind
Yeah.
the back, like come on.
They had a
come
good,
on,
they had a
so-
good back and forth.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
And like he, as a character,
Yeah.
Rhodey, he just knew, like, this again. Why do I even try?
Yeah, Mr. Babysitter, if you will. Okay, fine. We'll have the proper comparison at a later stage.
Yeah,
What I will say now is because Rhodey is two parts, right? As far as the character, it's Tony's best friend,
Yeah.
and he's also the army guy. I will say I liked Terrence Howard's Rhodey as the best friend.
yes,
Yeah, I
yeah,
think on that level.
And like you could see because it's early days, the characters,
yeah,
the side characters have more time.
yes,
Like
yes.
Pepper
Pepper Potts.
had more time. Like later movies,
It was
she's
almost
just,
surreal how much
yeah.
you got to see.
Yeah,
throughout the
it's just
movie.
like
yeah.
and how well the chemistry as well, just
Yes,
interact with each
yes,
other.
yes,
Because
yes.
in the later movie, she's like kind of robotic to me. Like she's lost some of her Pepper Potts.
I was going to say that a lot of what we're speaking on, we have to give credit to the writing as
Yeah.
well. Speaking of the writing, one of the most interesting tidbits about this thing, going back to the DVD quickly, right? So aside from it ensuring that I got to see the movie the first time around, at insane level of quality and so on, they also had the extras, which I'm all about. I mean, again, why do you think we have this channel? And I remember Jeff Bridges as Obadiah's thing. Again, one of my favorite castings.
Oh,
man,
it's just
in the MCU, but even beyond that, he was
Jeff
insane.
Bridges, the dude.
From Big Lebowski now over into this Ironman role, he absolutely smoked it. Now this is like, I always forget. I know he's at the very least Academy nominated. I can't recall if he won one or what.
I'm not sure.
But
I'm not sure either.
either way, this speaks to the caliber of actor that he was. Even at the time of stepping into this movie. So in the DVD extras, they've got interviews with the cast, and they're talking about how in the early days, so Iron Man didn't have a complete script at no point of the filming process.
A lot of it was improvised,
to do your rehearsals and stuff. No. Even by the end, there was no formal written script. The only way to do that is by transcribing what's in the movie, essentially. So they're making stuff up as they go along, and essentially this makes Robert Downey Jr. a co-writer because he did so much. He would stay up so many late nights with Jon Favreau, the director. Busy working things and saying,
Happy Hogan.
Happy Hogan in the movie, his driver / bodyguard. And all the different things and be like, okay, what about this? What about this scenario? What about this scenario? Now again, going back to Jeff Bridges, the Academy nominee, top tier actor, A-lister. He's put into this thing where it's like a playground. Every day, you don't know what's going to happen. People are just freestyling. And he was so annoyed at a point because of that. And he's like, he remembers looking at himself in the mirror and just looking around as well and be like, Jeff, you know what? Calm down, relax, enjoy yourself. And from that moment on,
it shows.
He embraced that environment.
And
if you look at how amazing he was in this movie, man, which is insane. Because if you think about it, he barely has screen time. Man. Like
he pops in like 4 or 5 times.
He pops in, sets the tone, and then he leaves.
And each turn there's a little bit more. He's a little bit more.
He influences the story, which is why he was such an amazing character. Because even with his absence in a scene, his influence is heavily present. So for me, again, one of the greatest casting choices that have ever been made.
But going back to Rhodey, you mentioned you liked him as a friend, and then as an army guy.
So it's more of a comparison thing, right? Not that I don't buy him as an army guy, but more in terms of where I would give Don Cheadle the upper hand.
Okay.
But the overall comparison will be
fair enough. I see where you're
going. Iron Man 2, which is then Don Cheadle's first movie. So, okay, I think casting wise we're good if we can get into like the overall story. And again, at the risk of putting the cart before the horse, speaking to my earlier point, as far as great as it still is, I don't know if it remains top 5. It is essentially because, look, as you go and dig deeper into the universe, of course, some of the movies get bigger and bigger. I mean, Avengers movies, by their very nature, are going to be a lot grander in scale. With this one, I realized it's actually such a small scale movie.
And I actually noted that down. Of like every Marvel movie now is just getting bigger and bigger. It's more grandiose.
Unnecessarily so.
The power creep is ridiculous. Everybody is getting all the power all the time.
Thank you for mentioning power creep, because that's the other thing that stood out for me about this movie is that
it's like,
look, I'm not trying to take away from him. So the Christopher Nolan fans, I'm among his biggest. Let me just make that disclaimer. We give him a lot of credit for grounding Batman.
Yeah.
But what watching this movie made me realize is that, dude, superhero movies only became a thing. Iron Man is like 2008.
Yeah.
So let's say maybe in the next 3-4 years from then.
Yeah.
That's when like the whole. I'm not talking about popularity. I mean in terms of the type of story that you tell with them. They only really became super.
Maybe like
around
Thor?
But he's a god, so inherently he's going to be, But just as far as what you were saying now, this whole thing of like adding a lot of power all over the place and
like
trying to upscale everything.
Everybody is like getting stronger and stronger and stronger, and it's like, okay.
That's what you call like a superhero movie, because everyone is just super. That I think was maybe even by Avengers we weren't really quite there yet.
Yeah,
because they did try to ground things as well. So even up until 2012. Superhero movies weren't really a thing in terms of the storytelling. It was more a matter of a normal society where the select few
Yeah.
get enhanced abilities and then how they navigate themselves in that normal world with their newfound abilities.
And there's not like crossover between powers.
No.
Now there's like crossover between powers and stuff. And I'm like,
so this is still in the day of the grounded superhero movie, right? And and I don't mean this just because Tony Stark doesn't have superpowers. No, I just mean even in terms of like the overall movie itself.
Just the feeling of the movie, the tone is very grounded. It's very it could.
It could happen.
It could happen. Yeah, it could happen. Like
again,
in the next
not
10
just
years,
because someone is flying in a
suit,
flight suit. No, beyond that, just the overall principle of everything.
Yeah.
You know, it felt so real and great. And I'm like, man, we give Christopher Nolan a lot of credit for this, but if you think about it, pretty much
early Marvel,
everything going back was that way, dog. I mean, I hardly remember what happened in the Blade movies, but essentially it was the same thing. Spider-Man, it was the same thing. The old school Batman, it was the same thing. You know. So I think, yeah, man, just seeing this gave me a great sense of nostalgia for the old formula for superhero movies.
And don't get me wrong, the new formula, it hits.
It has its moments.
It hits. You could say it hits more than it misses, but the misses are quite big.
Yeah, that's the issue, yeah. So, but that being said, what still makes this a great movie is that it was a simple story told extremely well.
And with great acting. Yes. Great choice of music, great tone of movie.
Yeah, everything from start to finish.
Yeah,
man. And again, now that we're in this universe or this space where, I mean, again, I suppose maybe because he's a lead actor and they ended up doing a movie together, but it seems Christopher Nolan is popping up in this a lot more than I expected. But with the promotion for Oppenheimer, Robert Downey Jr. in one of his interviews was like, it was so refreshing to be able to get into this type of a movie after so many years playing a superhero. Not just because he was playing a superhero. This is essentially why he said that. He's like, at one point, he's like, dude. And remember, Robert Downey Jr. was always an amazing and talented actor. From his Oscar nominations. Chaplin is from 80s or 90s.
There's another one where he's a lawyer.
With Ally McBeal. Was a TV show. I'm not sure if you talk about that.
No, it's a movie, but
not the Judge, because that is later on.
Might be that one.
If it's the Judge, then that was later on. But
I know that was got nomination
from the get-go. He was always just a very prestigious actor. It was just this, off-screen and offset antics that got him into trouble. But so being the superhero movie again, not just as a genre, but more because of the style of filming. It kind of sort of made him lose touch with the true essence of acting, because he's like, the one day I'm doing this great, amazing movie, then the next thing I'm standing in a green football field with dots all over my face, and I'm just like, what in the world have I done? Yeah, So that sort of shift from what superhero movies have later, become into a classic film with Christopher Nolan gave him a lot of perspective. But it was nice to just see him in that sort of space. And one of the things that stood out for me, of all things, because later on, I suppose you can also bring it up while we're here, if you want to talk about some of like your favorite shots or moments within the movie. And for me, it wasn't the first suit up. I think maybe the second, it was the second suit up with the Mark II suit.
That Mark II suit up and flight scene, it's such a... I was looking at the time. It's like a minute, 2 minutes.
Yeah,
but it's so impactful.
It's insane, man.
It's wild. But it's just everything is just like opening and closing and.
Thank you. Like it's the tactile element of everything. You see that thing and you believe that it's real.
That's what I found so cool. You mentioned groundness. Like you could actually see him. He's got the soldering iron. He's building this.
Yes.
He's doing everything. And
not the latest stuff where it just appears.
Yeah, he just appears. Oh, he built a new suit. Cool, or like with the glove just appeared. It would have been cool, but obviously it's an ensemble cast, so you have to give everybody their shine.
But even so, I feel there was a middle ground that they could have hit, but we'll delve into that, when we get to those movies later on. So again, there were a lot of different elements that grounded this thing, even within the more super elements, And so for me, the suit up. So again, just to explain, right? There's this term Mark, which is essentially it means version. So as you create a new version of something, the first one is Mark 1, then it's Mark 2, and so on. So in the movie, that big one that he built in the cave, that's Mark 1. And then the next one, which was silver, that's Mark 2, which he then, of course, painted over. But it was still the same model. So the suit up that I'm referring to, that there was this one where he's standing on this platform and his robot are putting the suit onto him.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, drilling the pieces into place and so on. Then there's a final shot where they get the helmet onto him and then it covers his face. That for me was amazing for two levels. I don't know, man. It's like, it's his transformation scene. Let me put it that way. It's watching him do a live transformation, but again, because of the way that they kept everything realistic, you feel that this is really happening. Now, here's what took that scene to the next level for me, which I've never noticed before. After the mask closes, there were smudge marks on that thing.
Oh.
I'm like, guys, look at the level of detail, which makes you believe that this thing is real. Look, in practical terms, I don't care if he's wearing an actual suit or if it's CGI. I just want it to look real either way. That's all I've ever wanted, from those sort of moments. If you think about, like the old Spider-Man suit from the days of Tobey Maguire, you could tell that this is an actual
and
real
suit. It looks textured. It's got the ridges.
It's got visual texture on it. Exactly. So that was this version of doing that. And again, I'm just like, man, the nostalgia, for the olden days, but more so when things were done right, was just going crazy for me, But again, I think let's just maybe finish off. You'd have to just, excuse me, like the excitement and the nostalgia.
Why are you apologizing? These people are here for this. Don't apologize.
It's gonna have me all over the place, but that's just, how insane this movie watching experience was for me. And just like with you, I hadn't seen it in many years. So this wasn't like, let me recap quickly. Like, no, it almost felt like the first time.
Things I've forgotten.
Exactly. It's literally, I can't even tell you how many years it's been. Well over 5, without a doubt. So story-wise, okay.
And like I watched it as a child, and now I get the adult jokes. Like Pep was when he meets up with that reporter, and then she wakes up the next morning, and Pep is like, sometimes take out the trash. Oh God.
That one I got. One of the new ones for me was when he was talking to the reporter.
Yes,
and
I can't remember the line.
Awake, stay up late at night and whatnot, wasting hours, going over this nonsense, and he's like, well, I'd like to waste a few hours with you. The way he was just floating back and forth with her, that was just insane, But again, let's just nail down the story of it all, right? So, right at the beginning,
So it was like a cutscene. So they showed us the mid.
Yeah.
The first scene is like halfway into the first act, kind of.
Just after he got kidnapped, right? So Tony Stark, background, rich
billionaire playboy,
which is an Easter egg,
and arguably smartest man on earth.
Yeah, definitely one of the smartest minds of
probably the smartest
entire time. Like but again, since it's Marvel, you have to think of like Reed Richards, but
but they're not even they're not there yet.
He's among the smartest minds that
are. We could say in this Earth variation, I would say the smartest man.
As the universe stands, cool, and he's again billionaire, like billionaire with a B and in dollar terms, right?
And he doesn't care about people.
He cares about as much as the average
billionaire does.
Trust fund child. His dad started Stark Industries, which is now a weapons manufacturing company. And with the US military being what it is, you can imagine just how rich these guys are. Like they, on next level. He's carefree, lives a nice, no consequence in lifestyle. And I mean, we were just speaking earlier about how his army friend is also kind of sort of his babysitter. So because of how much he does for the army,
they look after
him. By extension, the government, they aren't going to touch him, And out of the blue, he's living his life, doing his thing. And then he gets kidnapped by this organization.
So gets attacked and then gets kidnapped by the 10 Rings.
The 10 Rings.
The 10 Rings. Yes. Imagine the placement in movie one. Movie one.
I finally caught it, So they kidnap him and they force him to recreate one of the weapons he was demonstrating as he got kidnapped.
That scene is wild.
Again, speaking about favorite moments.
It's like I'm the Messiah, hands out and then explosion. So like, whoa.
It's like, ladies and gentlemen, I give you the Jericho.
The time delay.
And again, speaking of like some of my favorite shots, they switched over to like a wide screen. So then you saw him like with his arms up, and then you saw like the smoke just coming in, and just the force that it had, and how it even pushed the soldiers back. And it's like, this is soldiers, Granted, he also got pushed back a bit, but in that specific moment, he just looked so awesome with the dust, blowing behind him. So he was demonstrating the latest weapon.
Yeah.
As he says, a lot of people say that the best weapon is one that you never have to fire. I say it's the one that you have to only fire once. It's like, that's how America does it. That's how Daddy did it. You know, that's how I want to do it. He demonstrates his new weapon, and then he gets kidnapped just after that.
Yeah.
Again, it's the 10 rings, right? They want him to recreate that weapon, and then they plan on killing him. Something that didn't jump out at me before until now. Jensen.
Yeah.
That's his name, right?
Yeah.
Because whenever I think of it over the years, for whatever reason, I keep using a different name. I'm not even going to say it, but Jensen.
Yeah.
Jensen is the guy who lit the spark in his heart. He was ready to give up.
He saved it.
No. That's a separate thing.
Okay.
I mean, as far as the motivation. Because he says, they say I have to build this thing in a week. What's the point? They're going to kill me afterwards. So why even try? Right? And Jensen says to him,
something to meet, go back to see my family. Or...
Jensen then says to him, because again, Tony Stark was ready to give up. He's like, what's the point of this? They're going to kill me if I don't build this. You know, I've got like until the end of the week. And then Jensen says, well, it sounds like you've got a hell of a week. Just before then, he had said something about, I'm paraphrasing, right? But as far as the order of the sequence of events in the conversation, he says, there's no point in doing this thing. You know, these guys are going to kill me. And then Jensen says, so what? You're just going to give up like that? And he's like, dude, either way, by the end of the week, I'm a dead man. Yeah. And then Jensen says, okay, so you've got a hell of a week. That's what sparked the idea for him to say, you've got time, you've got resources, what are you going to do about it? Because
you're the smartest man on earth.
Dude, all along for me, it was like, he was trapped and he figured things out. But no, man, Jensen was, that's
Jensen was such a key character
to
the development of Iron Man. Because it also questions Tony Stark and what he's done. Because he questions Tony. It's like, these people, X, Y, and Z, what do you have to fight for? I think he also mentioned that paraphrasing.
And also, speaking along the lines of like, these are like these are big fans of yours.
Yeah.
Looking at how they've bought so much of his, weapons. Yeah. And of course, they only ending up using it for evil and that sort of thing.
And it could have been so easy for Jensen to judge Tony Stark because he had met him before as the drunk playboy.
Oh, yes.
And he's like, okay, we'll die.
Yeah.
That's fine. But he's like, no, I see the good in you, or I see the man that you could be.
I think beyond that, it was also what could have filtered into, because again, it's very easy to dismiss him purely as being a playboy.
Yeah.
I mean, sorry, just a rich, billionaire. And also what he does for a living, which is make weapons, right? And how it has led to the oppression that people like Jensen has suffered. It's purely easy to judge him based on that. I think one of the elements that added to his empathy is the fact that he had to operate him and bring him back from the brink of death. That's what made him see Tony as a human. Yeah. Because why else would he need to do that? Including the conversation where he dismissed him all those years ago. He could have just been like, man, screw this guy. But the fact that as they say, man, rich, poor, or whatever, at the end of the day, we're all mortal.
Exactly. What is it?
We're all gonna die.
It's that question. It's a question. In the desert, you're given a drop of water or 1 ton of gold. Everyone's gonna take the drop of water.
It's all about that essence of life and humanity. So I think the process of Jensen operating on him. Because here's the other thing. Jensen is captured. He wants to go see his family. Yeah. But then you learn in a few scenes that his family is dead.
But my thing hit home for me now, rewatching, was like, Tony Stark's weapons could have killed his family. He had every right to have a grudge against Tony.
Early on, I did say that Jensen has all the reasons in the world to have a grudge against him, given how he's been impacted in the oppression by Tony's weapons. I didn't think of it to that extent, but it's very true.
It's valid.
It's very true, right? And also, if you think about it in terms of, if his family is dead, what does he have to live for? Which just adds on to how much he was impacted by Tony when he was going through the process of operating on him, And so going back to the incident when Tony got ambushed and kidnapped, he got hit with his own weapon, actually, the very Jericho. No, it wasn't a Jericho. It was
it's just a normal bomb, but it definitely had Stark Industries there.
When it exploded, the shrapnel got into through his armor. This is like the bulletproof vest. It got through that, and it was cutting the insides of
his
him,
heart,
and he was beginning to die as a result of that process. So Yinsen, as far as operation we've been speaking on, he was removing those pieces from inside of Tony, but they were so small and so many, he couldn't get to all of them.
So he put a magnet there.
Not only did he save him, from dying at that particular moment, he's keeping him alive.
He's created Iron Man.
Yes, he gave him the idea for again, added to the influence. Man, Yinsen, I think he's been underrated.
Low key, but
this has just shown, the impact that he's had on the entire MCU. So he's now created a magnet that would, attract all the small shrapnel pieces and prevent them from going deeper into Tony's heart and body at large. So Tony sees that, he gets the motivational speech that, look, if you got a week, what are you going to do about it? Because this is also, I think the subtext of that is that this is a chance to create your legacy. Because he spoke on that, I just can't remember the wording, but he's like, now here's a chance to create a new legacy for yourself. And this was the tone of Iron Man or Tony for the rest of the movie, if you think about it. I'm turning over a new leaf. I'm redefining my legacy.
And it's the press conference when he comes back.
Yes.
It's him realizing his feelings for Pepper.
Yinsen, I think even this conversation is making me realize all the more, how valuable he was, man. So fine, that happens. He builds himself an Iron Man suit.
Mark 1.
And then he uses that to escape.
Yes.
Goes back, gets rescued and all of that.
Does the press conference, says he's closing down weapons division.
Yes.
His crisis of faith.
So again, as I've said, right, that idea that if I've got, because remember, the week that Yinsen was referring to is finite in terms of the situation that Tony was in. Because they told him you have a week, and if not, we're going to kill you. Never mind if not, because even Tony said, because the guy said, as soon as you build this, I'm going to let you go. And Tony's like, no, he's not. So he knew that that's literally the end of his life, one way or the other. That same principle, which is something, it speaks to existentialism to an extent, but it's something that we, to different levels, carry with us every day. Our time on this earth is only finite, and it's up to us to every single day make a choice of what we want our legacy to be it for the world, the family, or even for ourselves. So Tony took that principle, and it's basically then what he carried on for the rest of his life. So he holds the press conference.
Yeah, he holds the press conference, and then obviously Obadiah doesn't like it.
Why?
We know why.
No. Not the big, just the normal everyday reason.
Oh, okay.
He's a board member.
Yeah, he's a board member. The stocks are going to crash. They're not going to make money.
Yes.
Then Tony comes back. He's back home, and then he starts designing Mark 2.
Yeah.
Starts designing Mark 2, and then also his mindset has changed. His moral grounding has changed.
Yeah.
So obviously, he's more. He's more grounded.
Yeah.
He knows he's got a clear goal now.
Yes.
He knows what he needs.
Yes, he's got a purpose.
He's got a purpose in life.
Man.
He's got a purpose now. He knows who cares about him.
Yeah.
Obviously, Pepper happy.
Yeah. Valuing the things that matter.
Brody, and obviously at that point Obadiah as well. Because Obadiah is a father figure for him.
Yes, I was gonna say, let's break down the Obadiah character. Tony Stark's dad died when Tony's a kid.
Yes, and we know what that happens later on. How that happens later on.
Yes.
And then Obadiah was Tony's dad's business partner.
Yeah, business partner. You could even say best friend, man.
Yeah.
There was the ceremony when they were giving Tony that award.
Yes.
They broke it down. I've gotten some finer details, but essentially, Obadiah and Tony's dad were very close.
Obadiah ran the company until Tony was
Tony was able to take over. Yes.
And then,
Obadiah then has an actual stake in the company.
Yeah.
And I mean, with weapons, Tony did say weapons is only one of the things that we are known for. But they never mentioned the
other one.
No. They never mentioned the revenue percentage.
Yeah. But you can tell the sheer scale because the Jericho missile is, or Tony mentioned offhand when to the military purchases of 500 million
or more than you guys. So that speaks to the scale at which he sells weapons. So
and now
it's arguable that it was their biggest money making aspect.
100% government contractors.
Yes.
Double dealing.
American government, the American military, not just
And then obviously it's just Tony wanting to do the right thing, and then Obadiah wanting profits.
Yeah,
obviously.
It's a simple matter of greed, right? So if Tony shuts down, because remember the Starks as a family still hold the controlling interest. So if they say they want to shut down this division, they're able to do that. Granted, the board is going to try and do its thing, and So Obadiah can't stand for that to happen. And now, remember, another layer to unpack with the Obadiah thing, especially because, I mean, I'm sure we're getting to the twist here. So Obadiah took care of the company. He was close to Tony's dad. And then as soon as Tony's of age, he just has to hand it over to Tony.
He's had the power. Now he...
Exactly. And usually with guys that, whether it's a co-founder thing or just being very close
quite
to the
cool.
throne.
I think they had it in that when he's getting the award. I think they had like Tony in the front and then Obadiah at the back.
Just that foreshadow sort of thing. Good catch, actually. Yeah. So out of nowhere. In fact, the prior pictures was Obadiah on his own.
Yes.
So Obadiah's got the company in the palm of his hand, and then out of nowhere, he has to make way for that same careless, senseless boy.
He didn't work for this.
He did not work for it. He's smart and but he just got it as a birthright, So that adds to the motivation to not only why Obadiah wants then the company to resume as is,
and he wants controlling stake.
He also wants to kill Tony because essentially, to cut a long story less long, it starts to get revealed that Obadiah's thing, this father figure, is the same person who had ordered the hit on Tony's life.
Has been shutting Tony out of his own company.
Yeah, Tony got ousted from the board as a result of him wanting to shut down the weapons division, and the board cut him out. Only to find out, no, it was just Obadiah who said, no, man, let's just cut this guy out. I'll keep an eye on him. Now, a lot of things start to, come back sort of full circle and make even more sense. I saw this one little Easter egg thingy online. It's not set in stone, but it's certainly very plausible. Yeah. Remember, Tony, he was I'm trying to think, where was he before? I can't remember, but he was late he was at his basement working on his car and whatever. He was an hour and a half late for his flight. And then by the time he got there, he was like 3 hours late. And then he does the flight, we find out is to the demonstration. He does the demonstration, and then who calls him after? Obadiah. He's like, this guy is in bed. Obadiah is calling Tony from his bed. He's like, no, man, I couldn't sleep until I heard how the thing went.
Oh, wow.
The Easter egg says, this is Obadiah calling because Tony was late to the demonstration. It means that the kidnapping was delayed. So he's calling
wants to see if it happened.
Yeah, he's calling Tony to see where he is so that he can redirect the kidnappers if need be. And then right afterwards, and as soon as that happens, the call, then a few minutes later, that's when he gets kidnapped.
Fair enough,
So, like, damn, okay, that's a good one, right? That's one of the things that gets revealed. The other thing is the whole thing about Tony building because funny enough, and I'm glad it happened this way because the question came up to me, I was like, is this an oversight or is this relevant? Remember, Tony was kidnapped and asked to recreate his own weapon. So in my head, I'm like, man, if these guys are hired by Obadiah, who works for the company, couldn't he just sell it directly to them? But he wanted them to kidnap and kill Tony.
The thing was a little bit extra.
They
didn't know who they were.
Yes, that's the other thing. That's insane. He didn't even tell them who it was, but of course, if
they found
out to kill the golden goose, they're gonna want to milk it for
how do they say the merchant of death?
Yes, so you knew they would be greedy with the price and all this, which of course they did. They wanted to, upon finding out that this is actually Tony Stark. A, they wanted him to create a weapon for them. B, they wanted more money from Obadiah.
Another one, I don't know if you picked up, when Obadiah was talking to Tony after he said, I'm closing down.
Yes.
Obadiah was like, me and your father, we were ironmongers. And ironmonger is the name of his suit.
Is the name of the Mark 1?
Of Obadiah's suit.
Oh,
the ironmonger,
version. Oh, okay. So the tie with the... That's awesome.
That's a small tie in there.
Yeah.
Then the story goes, Obadiah betrays Tony.
Yeah.
And then obviously steals the arc reactor.
So that's the other thing, right? When, again, going back a bit, when Tony was in the cave, Jensen's magnet, right, is what saved Tony in terms of keeping the shrapnel from getting into his heart. And what Tony did, he essentially upgraded that to not only be a magnet, but to also be a power source for the
Mark 1 suit.
For the Iron Man Mark 1 suit.
It's like, what is it? It's quite a cool comparison. It's like enough to power your heart for 50 lifetimes.
Yes.
Or something very powerful for 15 minutes.
Yeah. So it generates a lot of power. Let's just put it that way. Now, because of course Tony then distances himself from the company, was focused on his own project. As he's explaining to Obadiah, saying to him that, because Obadiah's first question naturally as a board member is, what the hell are we going to do to make up the money? Tony's like, arc reactor technology. And Obadiah's like, this thing, man, we did it to shut up the hippies and whatnot. It's a side project.
It's not viable, it's not profitable.
And
but homie already knew.
Exactly.
Homie already knew.
Tony says, what if it is, man? What if I figured out a way, whatever, to compact this and make it.
That's how well they knew each other. I didn't pick that up. That Obadiah was like bluffing. Like, how can I say? That conversation was like, yeah, it's profitable, and then Tony's like, who told you?
Yes.
But I didn't pick it up. I was like, wait, how did you, like, they know each other that well?
Because after that, what he says is, you don't have as good a poker face as you think. So as Tony is explaining
that's how close they were.
That's the other element.
But he still got betrayed.
Yes, adding to the extent of the betrayal. Because now the thing is, Tony is now explaining to Obadiah, so that light that we see in Tony's chest and the Iron Man suit, it's called an arc reactor. So Tony's explaining to him that we could make money off of this instead. Before he actually shows that he's a prototype for that, he's trying to explain to him that I've figured out a way that we could make this a profitable thing. Then Tony can see by Obadiah's expression that he's not surprised by this thing. So he's like, how do you know? And so we know that he knows because they were keeping tabs on him in the cave and of course reporting back and all of that.
But we suspect the way from it's Rhodey who told. So when did he tell
Rhodey though? Did he tell him first? So he told him he's working on something. I don't know if he showed him.
I think when they were, it's not shown. It's not a scene that's shown. I think it's just in translation. It's just like shown that Rhodey knows about the reactor. Yeah. So the way Iron Man says, Tony Stark is like, who told you?
Rhodey. Yes.
So obviously he's told the two of them.
Yes. I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right about that. Yeah. So by this point,
but a cool thing is like you could know. He could have known. Rhodey wouldn't have told him.
Yeah. So
because he didn't answer like who told you. He didn't say anything.
Yeah. He's like, just buttons it up and then keeps it moving, which means it wasn't Rhodey. Actually, it wasn't Rhodey.
It couldn't have been.
It wasn't Rhodey because he would have said if it's Rhodey, but he can't reveal that it's the kidnappers.
Yeah, because if he says it's Rhodey and then you talk to Rhodey, Rhodey's like,
yes. That was actually very clever of him. So essentially, then because now Tony has this powerful suit, Obadiah takes the first suit which he gets then from the kidnappers, right? And he upgrades it and creates his own version, the Ironmonger. And then they have a battle because he decides, look, I mean, initially he's only wanted to kill him, don't get it twisted. Now he's like, let me just kill this guy myself. Because again, it's the only way to ensure that he keeps the company because he now has it, but to an extent. Tony's just out. He probably stands to gain full control of Tony's shares should he then, be out of the picture. So he then, gets to a plan of trying to kill him, but then he's defeated. And in a very big nutshell, that's essentially, the overarching story of Iron Man. And again, told very well. I've said this many times, man. There's only so many versions of any story that you can tell. The question is, how well do you do so? So this is a typical father figure and, son betrayal, but in a very spectacular fashion. So again, getting back to some of the finer details of the story, some of your favorite shots or moments that popped up as you were watching them?
Yeah, I think obviously we mentioned the flight scene with Mark II.
Favorite lines you can also
favorite line, as well. One of the favorite. We talked about taking out the trash. Good, funny line. Another one was when Pepper came in and caught him trying to undo the suit, and then it came on the news that this Iron Man was like, and she's like, what are you doing? You going down this path is eventually going to kill you, and it's such a payload when you watch. Infinite. Was it Endgame? Yeah. The payoff is there. It's like, and I'm like, wait. Obviously, they might have, retrospect, but like watching it back now,
it is a trajectory that leads that way. If he doesn't stop,
if he doesn't stop, it's gonna kill you.
I mean, he's doing all this with a heart condition. Let's not forget that part. So, damn,
that was like I think my favorite line that just hit like.
Nah, for me, man, my all-time favorite line in this. It was always my favorite line. To this day, it's not my favorite line, because now Obadiah was trying to recreate. So here's a story: we're trying to recreate Iron Man's suit. They found all the pieces of the suit when he was rescued, right? Because he crash landed and then he had to walk on his own because the suit was out of power. It was only meant to escape. It wasn't meant to, sustain any longer than that. Obadiah gets the pieces and then he uses that to recreate a new suit. But remember, Obadiah, all the scientists that he recruited don't have the mind of Tony Stark.
Yeah, they couldn't create the power source.
And this thing about creating the power source at all, it was a very spur of the moment thing. It's not like an off-the-shelf sort of product that you can recreate. Tony just had to think about it out of the blue. And remember, he used did he say plutonium?
Palladium.
Palladium. He used palladium pieces from inside their missiles and,
so basically like broke apart all the weapons that they had there
and recreated it with
it's like he Frankenstein.
Yes. Yeah. So again, it's not so easy to look at what he's built and be like, oh yeah, just take this and that and that and that. So now his scientists are unable to. They've done everything, which is copy and paste. As far as the suit design.
Like that's
crazy. But they can't figure out the mechanics of creating the power source to power that suit.
And they have unlimited resources, access to everything.
Listen, you name it. Everything except for the mind of Tony Stark, right? So Obadiah and his scientists are having a conversation about why he can't do this.
His line as well.
Obadiah then delivers the greatest line of the movie, and he's like, Tony Stark was able to build this in a cave with a bunch of scraps, And then the scientist is like, I'm sorry. I'm not Tony Stark. Which is so... Also, if you think about it, man, it's powerful in so many different ways because Obadiah's trying to step into that role. And it's like, even if you do what he did, you aren't Tony Stark.
And it also gives credence to what I've been saying, like, smartest man in the world.
Yes, like, he's just different. He's just different. So that was certainly, without a doubt, one of my favorite lines. And as far as, like, some of the favorite shots and moments and all, there was, I can't remember, I think, this is when the training exercise, right? So this is a scene when Tony goes to rescue some people. Again, the guys that kidnapped Tony are called the 10 Rings.
Yeah.
So he went to their base and was destroying their weapons. And as he's escaping, the military, they picked up Tony's suit on the radar. So now they're trying to, shoot him down. So not even the end, in the midst of that scene, whenever they show Tony and his suit just flying, and the background is like literal blue skies and he's flying through clouds and all of that. I'm like, I was saying to a friend of mine the other day that that's the thing that bothers me about this modern day of creating everything on a green screen. Like, for the longest time, I always feel bad for the actors, but now I'm like, even as a viewer, because I can see that this thing is green screen, man. Like, and of course we found out it's because, Disney is overworking the visual effects guys, so they don't have time to craft the effects properly to make them look real. But just looking at that real background, I'm like, look at how beautiful and picturesque this looks. This is why I want them to go back to shooting on location and doing as many practical things as possible, because for the viewing experience, it's insane, man. It's insane. You take it for granted because it's an easily swappable thing. But there's those of us with that particular eye where it's like it really, really just captures, your soul, so to speak. So that was definitely like, one of my favorite moments. There was also when Tony perfected like his flying and he was woo! And just showing his face and the excitement that was just insane, I mean, of course, the scenes where he's testing things out and
that's cool. That was a cool scene.
That
scene actually stood out for me. Also, it's a payload. It's like he's alone in his garage, surrounded by robots. He has nothing. He has no one around him. And then to see it come 20 or 15 years later, he's surrounded by all his friends.
Man, people who actually care about him and
he really turned over a leaf and
and to show how that new philosophy adopted really stuck, is there any other moments where you're like, man?
Let's see. I'm trying to think now. I don't know.
I'll also see if I can think of like others.
Well, I mean, if you saw it, Audi had huge product placement in the movie. Of
course, the R8. I remember
everybody's driving an Audi car.
In 2013, I stayed in this flat with some friends of mine, and there was this. It's like this, not indoor, but like a little soccer field type thing. and there would be this Audi R8 that would park. They would see it a couple times every week, and every time we would drive, I would like, hey, man, there's Ironman, you know, yeah. So seeing that car always brings me back to that moment.
I'll see. A fun one was obviously Shield when they just like.
Oh,
and she's like, oh, what is that device?
What is that? Is that like gonna hack and then you know?
It's just a bomb.
You might want to step back. Did you see what Coulson did after they all got into formation and then they're stepping away from the bomb and then Coulson just goes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man.
Coulson was also a human being, a character who doesn't get enough credit. Wasn't there for a long time.
Listen, man.
But
in that movie, you could just tell that I think Coulson just got hired like a month or two ago, and he's out to just prove himself, like you know, because even with the way
a recent promotion because he did feature in Captain Marvel.
Then
so he's been around.
That role is definitely a new one, and he's still trying to show that no man, I deserve this. Because even all the other scenes where Pepper was dismissing him, like okay, I will set up. Every time he comes in, it's that energy, like not quite entitlement, but you can tell he's got a lot of zeal behind him in terms of pushing, for this thing. Granted, it could also be because of the initiative that they're building, but still, like his energy was just so great for me, man. We spoke about Obadiah.
Obadiah
kind of overall, but just as a villain,
his reveal is like, I'm the one who got you out. That reveal, it's like you didn't expect it at all. It's like you know there's something wrong, but you don't know, and it just and in front of everyone.
And the other thing is that the hubris of it also, because it's like, why does it matter if he knows that it's you? It's like that villainous thing of saying, I want you to know that I did this type of, and I'm like, man, that was hella insane. And speaking of which, thank you. One of my favorite shots also, there's the scene where Obadiah steals the arc reactor from Tony.
He's doing the same thing.
He just leaves him for dead there. When he walks away, I don't know, man, that scene every single time, even before I got into my ultra nerdy mode of analyzing these things and whatnot, but it always just hit me with such impact and always just stood out when he's just walking away with the briefcase. Because the other thing about Obadiah, he's got the stature, dog.
Yeah, he's got an aura about him. It's just like, he's
exactly. Whenever he's got
presence. We talked about this with previous villains, like just the tone of this.
You don't need to be, I got all this power, all this. No,
he doesn't.
Gravitas
he doesn't have anything. He's just
insane motivation, well acted and then well crafted as far as the story is concerned. So that scene where he's just walking away with the briefcase, every time I watch that, because for me it's also like the final tipping point of his villain arc. Before he fully embodies and steps into it, because he's now got the missing piece, So it's just very impactful to watch, man. And there's also the part where he was actually grabbing the arc reactor itself, and the camera was like tilted a bit. And then when he steps away, they like do like a normal frame sort of thing. So the way that everything was emphasized, when they had it in almost portrait but also up close, I'm like, it reminded me, for better or for worse, of how Marvel was before it became this movie printing factory. Clearly, those were the days where the director still had a lot of say and influence in what was happening. It remained for quite a while, but it was obviously, being withered away more and more and more and more. But in the days where they just let them shine and do their own thing, because now all of them have the same aesthetic and feel.
And I hope, recently, the past few movies that I have watched, the most recent ones, there's more feel to them. Like the character work is, maybe it's coming back.
I would definitely hope so, but just to see it in its full glory, because even when Robert Downey Jr. and Jon Favreau, the director, speak on it, they're like, dude, I still can't believe how these guys would just leave us alone to do our own thing. There wasn't any influence, whatnot. Kevin Feige, yes, here, there, whatever, but we must remember that we criticize Marvel a lot in terms of what they've done lately, whatever, but sometimes I don't know where the line starts and stops between Disney and Marvel, because this is before Disney bought them out.
And then you still get some Disney bangers.
So, that's the thing. But just to see how this also just felt like, a movie, almost even, stepping into the film realm, but unfiltered and untouched and messed around by all these, typical studio elements and all.
It's more of a character movie than a superhero.
Exactly. And you could feel it in so many different elements, So that definitely stood out for me. Um, as much as I hate to bring this up with this movie, we do have to get into it. I don't know if there's any maybe things where unfortunate some elements where they missed the mark across the board.
Yo, I mean, I think it's such a big nostalgia factor for me that I can't see it with the proper lens.
Yeah.
Nothing that comes to mind really.
And which isn't a bad thing. As I've said earlier, for me, the one that would
it's not that there isn't. It's just nothing that comes to mind.
Exactly. Yeah. Because again, there's no such thing as a flawless movie.
Yeah.
But how obvious the flaws are speaks to how far off the mark you are. So I think it's only a compliment for these dudes. And again, for me, aside from the fact that I'm like, okay, maybe I shouldn't rank them as high as I do, is the one knock I have. But anything else, man.
Let's see.
Because again,
Tony Stark has a heart. Such a good scene.
That was beautiful.
And obviously, payoff it comes in later on again as well.
Man. Especially even with the Butterfingers, because he always screws things up. And then he was, a key element in terms of saving Tony's life. That was pretty awesome. And he was even like, "Good boy," What did I want to say now? The other thing is even the whole thing about like the big, which is where Marvel tends to flop in a lot of their movies, or a lot of the bad ones anyway. The third act as a whole, but more specifically the big fight with the villain. They had a pretty decent one. Hey?
It's a decent fight, and it built into the story because of what happened before.
Yes.
It's like, my suit is better than yours in every way.
Yeah, and I'm going to show you.
What did you do about the ice problem?
Ice problem. Oh, better get it sorted out then.
Yeah.
And not to mention back in the days when Marvel had organic comedy.
Yes,
and,
I think that's serious. I think that's what stood out for me. I'm so tired of just
undercutting the serious tones.
Like just too much comedy.
And like, also just how silly and how stupid all of it is. Yeah. This was
this was nice.
Authentic, man.
Even in We'll Do Incredible Hulk, just one or two, it's not a funny movie, but like one or two scenes, it was like,
it makes sense for the moment in the scene, and you're not mad at it. So yeah, man, I think overall, look, they did an amazing job. Jon Favreau, shout out big time. Interestingly enough, right, a lot of the times you give credit to Robert Downey Jr. for this being his redemption movie, but it was the same for Jon Favreau. Because, the big hit he had done before was Elf.
Oh, was he behind the camera?
Yeah, he directed Elf. Not sure if he directed some stuff or whatever, but there was one weekend, Robert Downey Jr. has been speaking about it a lot lately, where, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, and then I can't remember what the other one was. So between Downey and Jon Favreau, the one movie was held by this one, the other one was held by the other. They both got like panned. They both bombed at the box office, whatever. So
they were like
in some funny
parallels.
Sense, they had like a parallel trajectory where that's concerned. So they were both experiencing like a redemption moment at the same time. Because with Elf, yes, it was a hit, but I believe Jon Favreau didn't even want to come back. Will Ferrell himself was offered like 53 million or something to do the sequel. He was like, nope, because of how horrific the filming process was. And I'm sure, Jon Favreau caught that as well. And remember, yes, Ironman came out in 2008, but this thing started around 2005 or so. So not too long after that, So this is like such a soothing moment for the two of them. And man, it was just a beautiful full circle redemption story, both, on and off screen. And I think one thing we need to give it credit for is just how amazing and how greatly it has aged.
Yeah.
It's not about for its time or no. You dropped that today, you watched it today, you re-released it today.
The only thing that'll give away is that Tony Stark has like a flip phone.
Some of the technology. I remember Terrence Howard was calling him from like an LG flip phone. I'm like, you. Back when LG would do like black phones with red accents. Even I was like, ew, what's the But man, that aside, and again, we're not saying the movie doesn't have its flaws. It's just they didn't jump out to the extent where we're like, I didn't like this and that. But overall, hell of an amazing movie. I don't know if there's any final thoughts you have on it.
No, well, just for FYI for peeps out there, I am Iron Man, improvised line.
Yes,
it wasn't in the script initially. That's totally Robert Downey Jr.
Pretty much everything,
also, throwback to Robert Downey's redemption arc. I think it's when he's eating cheeseburgers, Burger King.
Yes.
So at his lowest point in his real life, he was eating, I think, Burger King or something. Some fast food.
It was Burger King.
Burger King. He was eating Burger King. Is like, what am I doing with my life? And
but beyond that, as he was eating because he had just come off a bender, drugs and all of that. He ate the Burger King and then he vomited.
Yeah, worst burger of his life or something. Yeah.
Yes, he vomited, and that's why he was like, man, let me just start.
Yeah, and then same thing with Tony Stark.
Yes,
worst moment of his life, he's just eating a cheeseburger.
When they rescued him from where he was kidnapped
in the press conference,
they asked him, "What do you want? Do you want to take him to hospital?"
That's why the cheeseburger line is so iconic.
And they got him 3 Burger King cheeseburgers. Yeah. So yeah, man, totally amazing movie. For anyone who hasn't seen it, I'd say definitely go and watch it. Yeah. And it's one of those nice standalone movies. You don't need to worry about connecting to this.
The only time you realize the connection if you watch the end credit scene, but that isn't even a thing.
It's so inconsequential to the main story. It's a dope action movie. Let me just put it that way.
Yeah, you'd think in starting off it's a war movie because they're in Middle East vibes.
But it's something refreshing, different, and just overall fantastic. Then I think
that's it.
That pretty much is.
Do you want to give it a rating, or do you just want to leave it there?
Ooh, ratings. So something I didn't mention, but I wanted to say in our previous video is that with this being our return and all, think of it as like a 2.0 iteration, or shall we say Mark 2? Mark 2 of the Phantom Geek Zone. So as much as there'll be a lot of the great elements that we brought before, there'll be some new things that we're trying, in an attempt to be, bigger, better, and so on. Ratings. What do you say? Do you want to keep them in, or I think that let's because it's a summation of how we feel.
Yeah. For me, rating is I don't like putting a number on the feeling.
I get that, but I think it's a nice way to just sum things up now that I think about it.
Yeah.
There is that thing where, look, we'll appear to contradict ourselves at times, especially if we get to the point of ranking movies overall. And it's not going to be ranking based on
a rating. It's in relation to each other.
Yeah. So the ratings just always take those as standalones and how we feel this best surmises our overall emotion.
I think for me, 8.5. Yeah. I think that's about fair.
I'd give it a solid 8. This movie, the nostalgia,
the nostalgia gives it that extra half.
For me, I'm saying the nostalgia is pushing me to give a lot more.
Yeah.
But
you know what's
the movie
coming.
Critic in me is like, no. Let's let's try to be realistic. So a solid 8 is definitely a good baseline to leave it off of. And then man, I guess with that brings us to the end of this review, and then we'll just catch you at the next one. As per usual, leave the comments. Are we wrong? Are we right?
Yeah.
Whatever you feel you want to, add onto the conversation with, whether it's stuff we've missed out on or extending the conversation, do that. We'll definitely going to engage.
If you're consuming here, it's on YouTube, and we do have an Insta page as well.
Yeah.
So check us out on Instagram. It's not as active yet, but
so there all details will be in the description.
So Insta, obviously you'll see some behind BTS.
Yeah. In good time,
not the K group.
Just to see how this
behind the scenes, how we set up.
Comes about. But until then, thanks for tuning in, and then catch you at the next one. Sure.